Randy, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk about starting beginners. This is an area that you and I haven't talked much about, having been high school band directors. But what a lot of people don't know is we also taught beginners. We taught middle school kids too. We were very involved in our programs from the top to the bottom. And whether it was in the summer or during the fall when we were starting beginners, I know that there are some things out there that people have various strategies and methodologies, but I think the most important thing, would you agree, is that if we set the students up with a process of how to read music, and we set the students up with a process of a good embouchure and how to use their air, then 9 times out of 10, they're going to be pretty successful and they're probably going to stay on their instrument.
I agree 100%. And first of all, the folks that are out there teaching beginning band are doing the Lord's work. I mean, it is such a tough responsibility, especially those people that are in classes. And Randy, you know about this. People that are in classes, they may have 60 kids sitting in front of them, and they may not be like instruments. You know, hopefully maybe they're all woodwinds or they're all brass or all percussion, but probably not in a lot of cases. So first of all you folks that are doing this, there's not enough kudos that we can give to you folks. But I do think something that I learned that I wish I knew back when I was doing beginning band, Randy, forget about the book for a little bit, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
just work on sound and work on enjoying getting sounds out of the instrument, because kids still enjoy that at the beginning. And then you can do some music reading things with them. But I'm not sure jumping in on all kinds of music while they're trying to learn the horn. This is just my opinion as an old guy. Okay, so take that for what it is. But if I was doing it again, man, I'm telling you, the first 2 or 3 lessons I had, whether I had 60 kids or 5 kids, we would stay on the instrument. We'd talk about just the instruments. And even if I had different instruments, I'd take a second. I'd say something about flutes, and I'd say, okay, now flutes, quietly, I want you to work on this embouchure while I'm working with the trumpets or whatever, and I know it sounds easy for me to sit here and say that, but for those people that are facing those kind of things, Randy, I think that's a good suggestion, is to
It
not worry about
absolutely
getting to
is.
line
Yeah.
number one. We all try to get to line number 116 by a certain date, and I'm not sure that really matters if the kids can't play their horns.
I was never, I'm right there with you. I was never a believer in teaching to the book and worrying about being on page 16 by December, because first of all, the kids have no idea what that means. And what's the difference if they don't sound good, if they don't understand any of the concepts and they don't have a good embouchure set up and a hand position set up? Big deal if we're on page 16. Who cares? And I didn't even use the book for the first 3 weeks, the summer band, when we taught beginners in Lawrence Township. I basically just stayed on the instrument. Mouthpiece barrel with the clarinet, head joint with the flute, um, learning how to move air, learning all the open tones, all the open slotting of notes on trumpet and French horn. And the other piece is, if you think about it as a kid, if we're having to handle this instrument, which for some of them is, if a kid's handling a tuba or a baritone, they're struggling with that. Then they got the music stand, they got the book, they got all the music. It's like we have to separate those things. So maybe a strategy during a heterogeneous class is to, have half the class or maybe just your brass players on some sort of curriculum for learning notes and rhythms, while you're simultaneously working in real time with setting up embouchures on flute, clarinet, oboe, whatever, and then reverse it the next day. I think, going slow to go fast is probably a much better strategy. And
Absolutely.
people talk about recruiting all the time, and most of the best recruiting effort the best strategy for recruiting is for the kids to be having success on their instruments.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and if they don't have a good embouchure set up and a good hand position and then know how to use air, and we can go into the whole percussion thing too. If they don't have good percussion, technique with hand positions, then they're dead in the water, and they're going to lose interest pretty quickly, because every kid, especially by today's standards, kids probably go into it thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. It's just like an application on my phone. I can push a button and I'm making music, and
Right.
You
Right.
know, and you can teach the kids tunes, you can teach the kids hot cross buns without them seeing it. You know, a little bit of the Suzuki approach with just hands on the instrument and not getting into the music thing, except for maybe, like I said, training them how to read and having some written curriculum for them to do that. And then gradually feathering that in to the curriculum makes a heck of a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing to think about too, for folks that are teaching high school band. I've done some clinics lately, Randy, and I know you do clinics all the time as well, but one director was asking me how to fix, pitch with clarinets and flutes. And I said, well, have you ever taken the head joints off the flutes and see where these kids are, or taken just the mouthpiece and barrel and see if they're on the right pitch? And this director was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go back and trying that. I know they did that as beginners. I'm like, but that was probably the last time they did that. And so that's why I think the teachers that teach beginners are so amazing, because if they can get that to happen and get it to be consistent, those are the real heroes in our profession, Randy. And I know that we both know that. But it's also tough, especially if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of resources and you have a ton of kids and you don't have a lot of time. So I like the idea of having part of the group, maybe they're doing some written exercises to learn how to read notes and rhythms, and the other group is actually having hands-on working on air. And I would also suggest for younger teachers that are starting beginners, don't be afraid to use drones soon with them too, so you start to
Pioneers.
develop their ears. Okay, it's about not just developing their playing ability, but developing their ears. So I think that's important also.
Yeah, all those things. And get to the book once they can produce good sounds. And if you go slow to go fast, they're going to get through to page 16 much quicker with a lot better set of skill sets than they would if they're just kind of sort of surviving.
Absolutely. Agree 100%. And this is, Randy, today we're talking about one of the toughest things in our profession. I mean, we really are. I mean,
Yep.
people can say marching band's tough. No, not compared to starting beginners. Nothing's as tough as starting beginners. So again,
Yeah.
kudos to all those people that are doing it.
And some of the best, and you mentioned this, but some of the best high school teachers I know start over with their kids, maybe in their third or fourth concert band. If they just don't know what they're doing
Right.
and are still struggling, they just basically start over with them and
Right.
get them set up. Because it's one thing to, okay, do mouthpiece and barrel, but are they truly achieving the pitch, or are we just doing it and moving on? Don't,
Right.
don't make it a checklist thing. Make sure they're
Right.
actually achieving it before they move on. And if they're not achieving it, try to figure out why, get some outside recommendations from your friends that might be clarinetists. And maybe that kid isn't meant to be playing a clarinet. Maybe they need to be on something else. I mean, that's true too. Moving kids to instruments that they can be successful on is certainly something that you can consider as well.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. And I think and not being afraid, I'm not a clarinet player, I'm not a flute player, but I'm still willing to try things, with embouchures and making sure, wow, that even the teeth are on top of the mouthpiece, I mean, simple stuff that we think is that we shouldn't even think about anymore. But in high school, if kids aren't getting good sounds, sometimes I even found that in a band I was doing a few weeks ago, there were some clarinet players that did not have their teeth where they were supposed to be, so it's just a process that if we can get started the right way, it's just saves so much time and takes care of recruiting, like you talked about, because if kids are good at what they do, they don't want to leave that,
right.
so and I know that to a lot of you out there, we're preaching to the choir. We get it. But boy, especially for you young teachers, if you're not sure about the beginning thing, find some mentors, that can help. I think of even one of our colleagues, Randy, Aaron Cole, who's one of the best at starting beginners. And there's also some great literature out there too to help. So
Yeah,
keep
they're
at it.
absolutely. Yep. Keep up the good fight. And Richard and I are there to support you. If you ever need anything, reach out to us, and wish all of you the best for a great continued success in your individual programs. Have a great spring, And we'll see you again next time on Coffee Talk.
Thanks, everybody.